All right, welcome back to the Pavilion. And these ones are always very, very tough after an Arsenal loss. Um, yeah, Arsenal to Manchester United 3 at the Emirates. And yeah, this one it wasn't because we lacked a bit of effort, but it did feel very avoidable. This game. We lost 3-2 at home to Manchester United, our first home defeat of the season, and a game that sat squarely in one of the emotional ones, and that we have to get through the season. But these are not the games that decide the title on their own, but they decide how much control, how much flexibility you have down the road. So today I want to break this down, calmly, honestly, and what worked, what didn't, and what this means for Arsenal, for the title race going forward. So let's get into our three ups and our three downs. Okay, Arsenal's first half control was a thing, right? In the first 25 to 30 minutes, Arsenal were exactly where they wanted to be, controlling territory, pushing United, moving them side by side, detecting the tempo, and United just couldn't settle, which was just great for us. And the opening goal, deflected or not, it was a result of sustained pressure by Arsenal. And that's important to say out loud. The game plan worked initially. So it wasn't a bad start. And it wasn't Arsenal getting surprised or anything like that. The issue came after the goal. So, second up, guys, Arsenal mental response. So, obviously, despite the errors and the momentum swing, with Zubimendi giving away the ball, Arsenal still never folded. I know it's hard to see that, in the midst of how this game sort of played out. But we still responded after going behind. We pushed, after conceding a long range goal, which, sometimes can just be disheartening. The Dogu goal just came out of nowhere. And especially, when it seemed like the ball did hit his hand, before he finally took the shot. And hey, you're not going to get me started on VAR and their inconsistencies, because I remember, Aston Villa, Havertz, scoring a goal that barely touched his hand, and they ruled it off. And this time around, they decided they were going to ignore that. But we did equalize late, and we stayed aggressive, and that matters. I think there's an element of that section of Arsenal's response that we can bottle up, not throw away, but look to replicate in future games. So our heads didn't really drop, and the mentality is still there. And so the problem wasn't belief, because Arsenal was still going, to try and win this game. It was actually more tactical. So third up, we just get through the ups, because I know, I'm just itching to talk about what went wrong, and I know a lot of people want to talk about that, and I get that. But I think sometimes in the midst of all of that, it's still important to recognize, some of the things that Arsenal did well, even though emotionally it doesn't feel like that. And the bench had an impact. The bench impact was positive. I mean, in isolation, Merino came on and scored, right? Arsenal gained presence in the box. Gyökeres coming in, Merino coming in. I think Mikel Arteta wanted to have more presence in the box, more people that can actually convert. The trouble is that the ball was not getting into the box as many times as Arsenal will want. And there were a lot of performances from different players. I was a little bit subpar, but I was talking about the up here. So I mean, let's just say that the bench did something, right? It did its job. But what didn't happen was the next step. Closing the game down once momentum swung our way. And this, guys, just leads me nicely into what Arsenal didn't do well. Okay, let's just start from the very beginning. Let's take our step back. The starting 11. Um, the balance was too risky. This was the first crack in Arsenal's approach to this game. Martin Zubimendi as a single pivot, on his own against a Manchester United where they were actually set up to play on transitions. So that meant that Zubimendi had to do a little bit more than he would typically be able to. And you've got to respect Manchester United quality. When you're having, Dorgu, Boemo, especially Boemo. Boemo's task was to press Arsenal when Arsenal had the ball. And so when you have, two, just one person in that pivot, and Arsenal like to set up their rest defense, with, three at the back and then progressing. And especially they also like to build with three at the back, as well. But when you have, pressure being put on, with just a single pivot, and you know that Manchester United have got quality. You knew that an error was going to be how Manchester United were going to get into this game, and that's exactly what happened. The back pass mistake, it wasn't just the Hala, it wasn't just Zubimendi just doing, something. It just happened because when you insist on controlling football, which is exactly what Zubimendi was trying to do, control the football, he had options. He could either have passed that ball all the way to the right or just boot it up front. But Arsenal like control. It's how we play. So passing back to the goalkeeper is something that you tend to see Arsenal do. But he did that without a safety valve. He did that without looking exactly at where the keeper was. And he did that without understanding the pace of the ball. So, of course, a team that is pressing you, on purpose was going to take advantage on that. And, in the title run, you simply cannot do that. You just have to simplify things, sometimes. And Arsenal didn't. Second one, the tactical adjustment, guys. After scoring, I'm talking about after we scored the goal. And for me, I think this is where the game tilted because United adjusted immediately. After Arsenal scored the goal, after we scored, they pressed the keeper and the centre back. If you notice, the first couple of times they were just letting us have the possession. They took Bukayo Saka out of the game with Patrick Dorgu. Dorgu did, an excellent job. You probably hear me talk about him a lot in this game. He did an excellent job, especially in doubling up against Saka. But he was also the outlet, for Manchester United in terms of their counter attack and transition. And they stopped chasing the possession, Manchester United. They just thought, hey, you know what? Let's just sit back and wait for them to make a mistake. And Arsenal did not adjust at all. We had the same build up. We're using the same tempo. And sometimes you need to recognize where you need to just change the pattern, of the game, especially after you've just, gone up. Just take control, calm the game down a little bit. But it didn't. It felt like we were just a little bit arrogant and overconfident. And that leads me to my third down, guys. The game management at key moments. This is the big one. This is the big one. So, we kind of put, risk instead of pragmatism. And I don't know whether it's a function of what everybody has been talking about. If you look at the last couple of games, when we played the big team, when we played Liverpool, when we played Liverpool twice, actually, when we played Man City, people kept talking about, oh, Mikel Arteta is playing with a handbrake on and all of that. And I think that all this does is just give him more ammunition, to revert back to that, when you're playing against the big games. Because what was really, confusing for me, and I'm gonna have to watch the game a second time again, it was nobody was stepping out to block the shots. Everyone, especially the Dogu, goal. There were two players side of the player, and normally you would want a player to really get in front of that one, especially a player that's getting into that zone 14, in the pitch. Arsenal didn't do that very well. There wasn't really an emotional reset, for Arsenal after we equalized the goal when we went 2-2 down. To just concede 3 minutes after you just made it 2-2, I think sometimes is the difference between contenders and champions. You just don't let that slip. You don't let the momentum swing that way. You just need to kill the moment. You slow it down, and just like, okay, now let's just calm down. Let's see how we can approach this game. But we didn't. And Arsenal allowed, Konya, and you can say it was a foul, it wasn't a foul, but either way, Cunha was just walking his way into the Arsenal, final third, and he took a shot. And listen, he's a Brazilian; they've got those things in their legs, and that shot flew in, and nothing Raya could do. And maybe for Arsenal, it's a lesson in terms of taking shots, outside the box. I don't think we really took shots outside the box in this game. So it was a little bit disappointing to see us lose, by two shots outside the box. And the last time that we've lost, we've just it's just been in devastating, fashion. So obviously, no one's happy as an Arsenal fan. We're all upset about this, but hey, let's just zoom out a little bit. Let's zoom out. Let's look at what does this mean actually. So the Manchester United game sits in our swing game buckets, right? This is the bucket that I told you that was going to be an emotional one, and it was a swing game, for a reason, because of the teams that we have to play. So it's Chelsea, it's Aston Villa, is Brighton, is Crystal Palace away from home. It's I've already talked about Chelsea, and then it's Spurs, and of course it's Manchester United game. So we needed 13 points from this bucket, right? So we've got 6. So if we just take stock in terms of where we are now, and we still have 7 points that we can get, out of this bucket with 3 games to go. So you're talking about Spurs away, talking about Crystal Palace away, and then you're talking about Chelsea at home. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit calm, because I'm kind of, zooming out to look at the big picture, how we can still get to 90 points, to win this Premier League title. And people might talk about the performance. It wasn't as bad, as we think. I think when you watch it again, you will see that it was about moments in this game in terms of what Manchester United did well. So there's still 9 points still available, and we need 7 to get 13. So that means that we must, as a minimum, win the next 2. The next 2 that we play, we've got to get 6 points, no questions about it. And that's Chelsea at home, Crystal Palace away, and then Spurs away. So we're hoping that we can catch Spurs at a good time. That game is still, a couple of weeks from now. But now, everything now is about getting back on the horse, building a number of, successive wins, so that we arrive at that game with lots of confidence and the ability to actually take the point. So this loss doesn't end everything, but it just removes our margin, guys. And from here on, Arsenal just need to avoid any self-inflicted loss. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge that Arsenal are going to have to face. Listen, winning this title was never going to be handed to Arsenal. We're going to have to take it. And this is a setback for Arsenal, but again, we go. And listen, guys, for me, there were a couple of things, and I made some notes here about what I thought, the 4 things that, really, really killed us in this game. One, we're overconfident in control. And then we underestimated the transition threat. We talked about it so many times. Even Mikel Arteta talked about it in his press conference. And we still allowed that to happen, especially for the second and the third goal. And then we had poor in-game risk management. That for me is just something that I thought we had gotten better at, and of course failure to kill those momentum swings. So this game was about, tactical flexibility, and recognizing moments inside the game. Arsenal don't need perfection from here on it, but I think we need to survive when it matters the most. So we go again, guys. And if you enjoyed this, breakdown, hit that like and subscribe button. Share this with as many Arsenal fans as possible, because I know everyone will be losing their head, right now. And let me know in the comment section, what would you have changed after we had gone 1-0 up, right? And as always, guys, we keep moving. We keep believing. This has got to be our year. Come on, you Arsenal.